And then the reality of it, of course, begins to settle in amongst the crowd. They then evacuated the crowd. It took them a good, I would estimate, 40 minutes before the announcement was made that Candlestick should be evacuated. Strangely, very few people left the ballpark, and even more strangely, I think very few people got out onto the field. Perhaps they were not allowed out onto the field, but I mean, if we were ever, God forbid, to have a situation like this take place again in a major American arena, they should immediately let everybody get out onto the field, which probably would have been the safest place for everybody to be at Candlestick Park. And then everybody sort of filed out when the game was postponed officially. Again, fortunately, there was no panic, there was no crowding, none of that. As far as I can tell, there have been no injuries at Candlestick Park. Again, I'm sure they will be checking for structural damage. As to what will happen to the rest of the World Series, I wouldn't have a clue at this point, Ted, because the problems in this area are far larger right now than the resumption of play in the World Series.
Al Michaels, as we've been saying periodically throughout the course of this evening, one of the reasons that we have not yet been able to bring you any casualty reports, and I am assuming that there will have been some casualties, although, as you pointed out, fortunately, there do not appear to have been any at Candlestick Park itself. As soon as we get any casualty reports, we will, of course, bring them to you. But let me explain once again what is getting in the way of collecting any of that information. The phone lines are down. There is very bad communication. One of the miracles is that you and I are still able to communicate at all, and that we're able to see you and get that picture and get some of those remarkable aerial shots from the Goodyear blimp. You know, it looked at one point as though there was almost an emotional aftershock there at the stadium. We saw some of the players with their wives, and a couple of the wives quite literally in tears, as ball players did what everybody else does in a situation like that. You start to look for your family. You try to get everybody together again. You start counting heads. We're looking at some of that videotape now of some of the ball players with their youngsters. You want to take us through that?
Right. Well, I can see Storm Davis, the Oakland pitcher, and you're exactly right. What had happened, Ted, is that, and there, I believe, is Terry Steinbach. Yes, that is, and his wife, and Mark McGuire, and Fay Vincent is in your picture right now, the commissioner of baseball. It took a while for it to settle in before everybody really realized what had taken place, and then the wives were allowed to go down onto the playing field and join their husbands, and the children came down as well, and everybody, as I say, very orderly filed out of the park. You know, one thing about earthquakes, Ted, is that you're not sure how close to the epicenter you are. So in fact, had we been at the epicenter of this quake tonight, not this particular quake, but let's say that there had been a small earthquake at Candlestick Park in the neighborhood of 2.8 or 3.2, there would have been there would have been no damage here, very little any place else. So I think that was perhaps the sense of what people had. You begin to feel you are at the epicenter, and if you were, this would have been a very, very small quake where it centered near Candlestick Park. You have no idea, of course, where the epicenter was. And as I stated before, once I knew it was in the 6 range, you knew as a Californian that it had to be 75 to 100 miles away at least, because all of the damage is done near the epicenter, most of it.
Let me just interrupt you for one moment. Once again, we're getting that extraordinary aerial shot from the blimp of the fire in the marina area. That's not too far from the Golden Gate Bridge, which I believe those are the lights of the Golden Gate Bridge that you can see in the background there. I am told that the fire in the marina area, that fire that you're looking at, appears to be gas-fed. And the fire department in San Francisco is not putting water on the fire because that would dampen it down, obviously. That would be the good news, but the bad news would be that dampening it down would create fumes, which in turn could cause a major explosion. So what they're trying to do, what the fire department is trying to do, is to protect the surrounding buildings, but they can't put fire on they can't put water, rather, on the main fire itself until the gas leak itself is capped. Now, how they are going to do that, as you look at that fire, you can see what an extraordinary blaze it is. How they're going to cap the gas leak, I do not know. Al Michaels, you know, you were talking a moment ago about the orderly fashion in which Candlestick Park was evacuated. In point of fact, I don't know if you're aware, but at one time the police inside Candlestick Park were urging people not to leave the park, to stay there, because they said the building itself, the structure, is structurally sound, and apparently they believe it is a fairly good place to be in an earthquake.
Well,
go ahead, Al.
I think they would have been remarkably prescient to be able to predict that and not predict and not take into effect what might have been a large aftershock or aftershocks. I think it was more a case in retrospect here, Ted, of it being a very good idea that the police did what they did, at least to avoid panic, because now that I begin to think about it, had somebody come on with a panic-stricken announcement to evacuate, you can imagine what it would be like in a stadium that would hold in excess of 55,000 people, a stadium with relatively small aisles. Again, this was a ballpark built before a lot of the modern stadiums of today, which have
Al,
better egress.
forgive me for interrupting you. I don't know if you can. We're looking at some street scenes right now. Do you have a network line in front of you? Can
Yes,
you see
I do.
what
In
we're
fact,
looking
I
at?
can see. I can.
All right.
Yes,
so you can
that
see
is,
there really has been some extraordinary damage. Do you happen to recognize that area?
Well, that appears to me to either be the area we're seeing right now in those live shots from above. The houses in the area in which that fire is taking place right now are similar in style to those. Again, I can't tell you for certain that is tape there of what you are seeing or what we have been seeing live. But it appears to me to be in the neighborhood and similar to the types of homes that would be involved in the inferno that we've seen in the Marina District.
Well, indeed, you were saying a moment ago that it is a residential area. That clearly looks like a residential area, and quite frankly, the way that fire looked and the way those buildings were cracked, it would be consistent with everything we've heard. Let me just say again, because we've spent so much time looking at that fire this evening, that apparently what the fire department is doing is quite deliberately not dousing that